Okay, so this is lecture number 5 in unit number 7, the last on personality before you go into intelligence. This is the social cognitive theory of personality and exploring the self, which goes a lot with social psychology, which for those of you guys that are with me in 2020, the unit we had to skip, hopefully we'll get to a little bit later. So this reflects a lot back onto that. So there'll be some stuff that I talk about here that you won't necessarily see on this slide, and that's okay. We'll work our way around it. So if we go on, there we go. So if we go on and we take a look at technical difficulty, social cognitive perspective, this is basically looking at the idea of how we learn from others and how we observe from others. Now, back in the unit where we took a look at learning and thinking, which would have been unit 6, which we're a little bit out of order here, Albert Bandura did a study with a Bobo doll. And what the Bobo doll was you put a kid in or you have a kid look at his mother in a room. Mother is in the room with a bunch of toys, and she finds this Bobo doll, which is an inflatable doll that she can punch, and it comes right back up again. The little child watches mom hit the Bobo doll for about 15-20 minutes. Then he goes into the room and he is surrounded by all the toys. But inevitably the child will go towards the Bobo doll and pretty much treat the Bobo doll in the same way that his mother treated it. And this is that social cognitive perspective of personality that says generally our personality is we learn from watching others, from observing others. So it's what we know and it's what we've experienced. But again, what we know is based on other people, what we feel. A lot of our emotions mirror neurons based on other people and what we observe, what are the social norms that other people are doing, how we pick up our language, how we pick up our values, all these things, we pick it up from around us. So this was built from research on learning and cognition. Now, what this does fail to consider is the unconscious and our individual disposition, the mood I'm in on a particular day. It just might be my mood. Excuse me, may have nothing to do with other people. It's just, it's how I'm feeling on a Monday. Doesn't take that into consideration. Doesn't take in the subconscious of my id and my superego and that internal dialogue. It's all based on, the here and the now. But today, cognitive behavioral therapy is the most dominant psychological approach to explaining human behavior. If you'll remember back early on when we talked about stress, and we talked about motivation, and we talked about some of the ways that you sort of control that is if I can change the way you view the world, I can stop a lot of your problems. If my boyfriend cheated on me, well, you discovered he was a bad person if you look at it from a different perspective. So again, when we're looking at the word social cognitive, cognitive is the way that we think. Social is how others impact the way that I think. That's the social cognitive perspective. And cognitive behavioral therapy is sort of changing the way we think, which will change the way that we behave. It all really sort of makes sense if you break it down like that. Now, the social cognitive perspective is based primarily on something called reciprocal determinism. And this is really sort of the idea of how does the environment affect our behavior and how does our behavior affect the environment. For example, what you watch on TV, what's on Netflix, what's on Hulu, what's on MTV, any sort of current hip now show, is it a reflection of you? Does the executives at MTV get together and go, oh, well, let's look at what kids are doing. And, oh, they're doing this, let's make a program about that. Or do the executives of MTV make a program and you as teenagers go, oh, that's what's on TV? That's what we should be doing. Is it one? Is it the other? And really what this comes into is kind of a chicken and the egg argument. And what we determine is that different people are going to choose different environments. You choose your environment, but then your environment shapes you. You choose your friends, but then your friends are important in shaping you as important as you are to shaping your friends. So it's sort of an interactive thing that goes on there. Our personalities are going to shape how we interpret and react to these events. And anxious people will watch things that will confirm their anxiety. The people who watch Shark Week are most likely already afraid of sharks. And it's there to sort of confirm it. So is the watching Shark Week, is that making me afraid of sharks? Or is it that just reaffirming what I already believe to be true? Our personalities help to create situations to which we react. Remember, we talked about the study where men were told beforehand that women had looked at their pictures and their resumes and had found them attractive, then they acted attractive. So again, sometimes our expectations, our societies, whatnot, this guy right here, your little phone, and the little phone and the sort of impact that this phone has on your life. Now, does this phone have an impact on your life because it's the phone impacting your life, or does how you interact with the phone help impact how that phone interacts with you and how you see other people using the phones, how you see other people, sort of not, teenagers not going out as much, teenagers drinking and smoking less, doing less risky activity? Is that the results of the phone shaping them, or are they using their own lives to shape how they use the phone? This is, again, that chicken and the egg argument that we're taking a look at right here. Now, this biopsychosocial approach to personality takes all three of these things into account. Who we are is biological. It's the DNA that we have. I was born a certain way with a certain temperament, with a certain intelligence, with a certain attractiveness, whatever. So we take the biological, we combine that with the psycho, so how my brain is set up, and then who I'm around, the social, so biopsychosocial approach. We are the product of many different influences, which is why we don't act and react in the same way. We don't have the same biological chemistry. We don't have the same mind. We don't all have the same experience. We're not all in the same social situations, which is why, again, when people say something like, well, Americans is a really wide umbrella of people. Watch Tiger King. They're Americans. And again, I haven't even seen it, but I figure it's a good reference. Every moment is shaped by our biology, our experience, our cognition, and our disposition. And depending on what sort of combination we have in us, it's going to sort of affect who we are. A threatening situation could turn one person into a criminal and another person into a hero, depending on who we are. Somebody sees that the Walmart is being looted because the energy is out. One person, it could turn into a criminal. Another person, it could turn into a hero because they're going to go in and help the business and everything else. Boiling water will turn a potato soft, yet that same boiling water will make an egg hard because it's two different characteristics coming into that same stimulus, that same environment. So with this idea, our personality is impacted by our biology, the genetics we have, our brain activity, our autonomic nervous system, treating our body the way it's supposed to. There's going to be psychological influence, what we've learned throughout our lives, the unconscious thought process that's within us, and then what we expect ourselves to be. Then there's also going to be the social cultural influences, which are my childhood experiences, what that situation is, what is the expectation of those around me for me to act in this way, and what sort of support do I have? All of this is going to impact my personality. For example, you taking an AP class. Your ability to take an AP class is, do you have the genetic intelligent level to be able to do that? That's going to be part of it. Have you had success earlier in school? So what you've learned about that, your sort of unconscious motivation within that, your expectation of your abilities, all that's going to have an impact. Plus, again, social cultural, what were my experiences in classes before? What is the influence? How important is going to college and getting this credit for me? My cultural expectations around my friends. What is the expectation that I take these classes? And social support. If I were to fail this, can I take the risk of failing this? Will I still be loved by my family? Can I take that risk? So all of these together will sort of impact what our personality is. Okay, so again, biological vulnerabilities, social vulnerabilities, psychological vulnerabilities all come into our coping skills there. Now, positive psychology is part of this social cognitive perspective. This is the scientific study of optimal human functioning. Excuse me. Need a beverage for my optimal functioning. This aims to discover and promote conditions that enable us to, as well as a community, thrive. Optimistic people are going to lead healthier, happier lives because they're looking at the positive. Whereas people who are extraordinarily negative, extraordinarily pessimistic, are playing not to get hurt. but you don't want to be too optimistic. You know, again, you got the tiger running through the zoo. You know, I know everybody else is running, but maybe it's not like all tigers. Maybe it's a special tiger or whatever else. So we want to be positive, but we don't want to be overly positive to the point where we're gullible and people can take advantage of us. So again, when we do these positive actions, you know, the identity steps, we're going to exercise strengths, experiencing flow, the action steps, we're going to build good habits. This is what we will become. And then this is how I'm going to think. I'm going to celebrate successes, manage my mood, and do these things because I control me. I have this self-efficacy that we talked about back with motivation. Now, in exploring the self, what we tend to also have, teens more than anybody else, with that egocentrism, is a bit of a spotlight effect. We overestimate others noticing and evaluating our appearance, our performance, and our blunders. One of the issues is that you are the star in the play that is your life. You know, you are living your life. You are in every scene. You have your perspective. You know, other people have supporting roles in it, but you are the most important person in your life. You're the only person you're promised, cradle to the grave, you're going to be with is you. So since our world revolves around us, sometimes we assume that everybody else, it's us as well. So when somebody has a reaction to us, when someone's in a bad mood, we sort of think, what did I do first, instead of what's going on in their lives, which is also part of the individualistic culture we live in America. It must be about me. This goes back to the fundamental attribution error, which again goes back to social psychology, which we haven't been able to cover. But this is the idea that we think it's about us. You take a look at these two girls right here, this little girl right here with the sad look on her face because she's looking at the scowl on this girl's face going, she keeps frowning, she hates me, what did I do? And all she's thinking is, I want a cupcake, I'm hungry. You know, so a lot of times people read us wrong because they think what the way we're reacting is about them. I have a very mean face. It's a naturally mean face. I mean, yeah, it's just, I have this I have this scowl. Just sort of, I look angry all the time. And if you were talking to me and I look at you like this, you're just thinking, I'm not interested at all. Sometimes I'm not. But usually it's because I'm thinking, I'm going through things in my mind, whatever, and it's not about you. And this is where I've had trouble with communicating people for years. My wife can read my face in ways that other people can't. So she's really good at that, which is why sometimes she can't understand why other people have the reaction to me that they do that is more negative. Again, we think we are the focus of everybody. There was a study done back in the 70s where people were asked to walk into a room wearing a Barry Manilow t-shirt. Barry Manilow back in the 70s and 80s was this sort of over the top, sort of a soft rock sort of guy. Looked at as really nerds liked him, or elderly women liked him. You know, I'm sure your mothers or your grandmothers, probably for your generation, love Barry Manilow. Okay, so people were asked to wear a Barry Manilow t-shirt, and people thought half the class is going to notice. I'm going to walk in, half the people are going to notice. When in fact, only 23% of the people even noticed that they were wearing the shirt. And of those, really nobody made a judgment. And just, hey, I think somebody was wearing a Barry Manilow. That was weird. Yeah, but they were. Whatever. So we think that everybody else sees everything about us. When you speak in public and you're nervous and you're up there and your hands are shaking and the sweat's coming down, and you think everybody sees every little thing that's going on with you during your class presentation. But as they're watching you, truly what's going through their mind is, oh my God, I hope this takes up the whole period because I don't want to be called next and everything else. That's what's going through their minds. But we think their reaction and their nervousness and their anxiety, we think it's about us, but it's usually not about us. It's about them. You know, sometimes it's about us, but usually it's people going through their own little journey. All right. Self-esteem is our feelings of high or low self-worth. People who feel good about themselves, again, happier, more successful people, less drug use. Why would you do drugs? You know, if you feel good about yourself, why would I want to be in an altered state? Why would I want to be in an altered mind? I'm happy in the state of mind I'm in. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. because I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good where I am. I like to have this control of me and everything else. These people tend to not be shy. They tend to not be lonely. They tend to be outside of their own minds. That's sort of the good thing. The subjective human being has an important value that no matter how he may be labeled and evaluated, he is a human person first of all, which, by the way, I just watched, and this is going to kind of throw off, I probably, in a series of lectures, but I just happened to last night, 2 nights ago, watched a special on Mr. Rogers, and where people go, everyone's special. He thinks everyone's special. Well, it's not that everyone's special and has value, which I'm going to talk about here in a little bit as well. But that just popped into my mind. Low self-esteem comes in two forms. You may have low self-esteem because you fell short of what you thought you'd be, which could lead to depression. You know, sometimes you set a goal and that goal was unreasonable. Somebody goes, I'm going to ace AP psychology before you ever stepped in the class and knew what the class was. And that's sort of setting you up for failure. Not to fail the class, but not to failure of getting to your particular goal because you don't even know what the class is yet. And also falling short of what you thought you ought to be, and that can lead to anxiety as well. Esteem levels can lead to our opinions of others. You know, tell someone they did well on a test, they're more charitable. Tell someone they did poor of a test, they're more critical. What we think about ourselves truly impacts how we react to and think about other people. So our self-esteem has a lot to do with who we are and how we react to others. And this goes back to, again, that idea of self-efficacy, which we talked about back with motivation. Self-efficacy is how much control do you think you have over your life, your personal control. Now, if you feel like you have an internal locus of control, you think you control your own fate. You tend to be higher achievers, more independent, enjoy better health, less depressed, because what I do is going to make things happen. If you have an external locus of control, you think that the outside is beyond your control. You believe in conspiracy theories, the Illuminati, everything else, because no matter what I do. Again, this lecture is taking place during the whole, this is April of 2020, so this is during the whole coronavirus. If you have an internal locus of control, you're thinking, you know what, if I stay home, if I take precautions, if I wash my hands, if I put on the mask, everything's going to work out fine. I control whether or not I get this virus and how I react to the virus. But if you've got an external locus of control and you just said, that's it, it's a virus, everybody's out there, I just might as well go out and talk to other people because either I'm going to get it or I'm not. You know, and you think that your actions don't matter, that also leads to more anxiety because you're always suspicious because you can't control your life. Again, it's like you're going down a river, you're in a canoe. Do you put the oar in the water or do you take the oar out of the water? I mean, yes, the stream of life and the canoe is going to take you a certain direction, but you can still get that oar in there and you can still control a little bit of it. You'll put the oar in there if you got an internal locus of control, but if you don't and you have an external locus of control, you're just like, the river's just going to take us wherever. The rowing doesn't matter. Now, personal control and self-efficacy, again, those with more of a sense of control also face less stress and they're going to live a longer life. When you take a look at the hopelessness level and the mortality rate, people who have a high level of hopelessness are more likely to fall ill of things like heart disease, of things like cancer. Now, again, your attitude isn't going to cause your cancer, but your ability to be able to defeat it. Whereas if you have a low hopelessness level, which means you think you have control, your mortality rate is much, much lower. So again, your performance experience, how you observe other people, how you're persuaded by other people, and your emotional arousal, all this is going to have an impact on my self-efficacy and what I believe in or not believe in. Now, we talked about with humanism that there is a self-serving bias. We do tend to perceive ourselves favorably, especially in a Western US culture. We tend to see ourselves better than what we are. It's the reason why we have Instagram pages and Facebook pages and you have stories and social media accounts because you think that your life is so important that it must be shared with other people because I am interesting. We all think that we're interesting, and to a level we all have some interesting stuff to us, but then we're all competing for everybody else's attention on what's interesting. You know, I got to put out the comment on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook, and I need other people to see this and I need other people to comment on it. It's very important that they do. Most people see themselves as better than average. Okay. 90% of business managers, 90% of college professors rated their performance as superior to their average colleague. We can't all be superior. Somebody's got to be average, and someone's got to be below average. 49% of men said they contributed towards half or more of the child care, but only 31% of the wives agreed. There's a gap there. 86% of Australians, again, a Western culture, rated their job performance as above average. Only 1% rated it below average. It should be 50-50. So again, we have somewhat of an inflated ego of ourselves. You go online and you take the little test, which Disney princess are you? You're not a Disney princess. Which Jedi or Sith master are you? You're not a master. You know, it's very few people, but again, we think it's us. I'm special. I've got to be this thing. And an inflated sense of self-worth leads to more aggression when you feel threatened by others. You know, I'm an American and I'm the greatest and we were chosen by God to be here, and based on all this, and these people coming over here are a threat to me. You know, build a wall, they're a threat to me. Not that I'm saying building a wall is wrong or anything like that, but you're much more of watch out. I've got this and people are coming to take it away from me. You know, the Nazis who used the whole idea of it's the Jews, it's not your fault, it's somebody else. You know, the KKK who were basically built on the idea of this white superiority, and that no matter what your lot in life is, your lack of education, your lack of mobility, your lack of success, at least you're better than this segment of the population, which is a great lie. But all of this is about feeling threatened by others, not being able to accept others, because your self-worth is ingrained, and sometimes it's wrongly ingrained. Again, the self-serving perceptions that are on the rise in America, Facebook, song lyrics, all these things about me and myself and what I am. 2008 study of college students' self-esteem, 51% of students scored a 35 or higher on a test whose highest possible score could have been a 40. Highest possible score. So this idea of, you know, when you see people, I think I've mentioned this in class before, but they go to a restaurant and they get their food and they sit there and go, I got to take a picture of my food. I got to share it so everybody else sees it. Look at how special I am getting my meal. Aren't you jealous? Aren't you envious? A lot of this is a little bit rooted in what is called narcissism. And this is what I was talking about. Okay. Excessive self-love, excessive absorption. The millennial generation is called the me generation because they were the ones who were born in the 80s and 90s, and they were the ones who basically and narcissism has been on the rise with them because they were told how special they were put in leagues where no score was kept, and all these sort of other things. Now you guys, the iGen generation, which is basically based on technology, you guys are interesting because not only you think you're important, but your importance is based on likes, and it's based on the perception of other people. Am I, you know, how many followers do I have? How many views do I have? All these other things, where your narcissism is a little bit more fragile because it's all tied into the millennial generation. Assumes everybody thinks they're important. You guys want everybody to think you're important, and you need data on how important you are and all these other things, which correlates with more selfish behavior, materialism, desire for fame, inflated expectations, fewer committed relationships, more hookups, gambling, more cheating, play the lottery because I'm special, I'm going to win, cheating, I'm special, I'm not going to get caught. And that's the trick. And a lot of people, and again, back to what I was talking about earlier, I was watching Mr. Rogers, and some people will blame Mr. Rogers or Barney for telling every child that they're special. And the problem with the word special is special comes along with this sense of entitlement. I'm special, so I'm entitled to these things. Now, you're not special. It's not that you're special. You're special to certain people. You're special to your parents. You're special to your family. You're special to your friends. But to society, you're traffic. So it's not that you're, instead of thinking that everybody's special, I think the tone that we need to take is that everybody has value. Okay, everyone has value. Your value is equal to my value. To say special means that one's more valuable than the other, and I don't think that's accurate. I think we all have value, And what we need to do is we need to respect one another's value. But this idea of special and self-entitlement can lead to narcissism. And if you flip the coin of narcissism, and this is an example of narcissism, this is a picture from Ansel Adams, who did these great black and white images, goes to national parks, Yosemite, beautiful black and white image. But if Ansel Adams was a millennial, the picture would be taken like this. You know, the selfie is really narcissistic. The idea of here's a wonderful thing, there's my face. Where just take the picture. We will assume that you were there. We'll trust that you were there. But this insecurity with the narcissism, no, look, it's really me here. It's here, but it's really me here. When that insecurity of people, no, I trust that that's you there. You don't have to put your face there as well. Now, again, the other side of this coin of narcissism is shyness. Shyness is a feeling of apprehension, a lack of comfort, awkwardness, especially when you're around other people. Most common in new situations with unfamiliar people. People who are shy tend to have an overly active frontal lobe. You're playing 3 or 4 moves ahead. You know, if I say this, then they'll say that, then how will they react to this, and all these other things. Primarily defining characteristics of shyness, again, largely ego-driven fear of what others think of my reaction. That is shyness. Tend to be very introverted, not all the time, but tend to be introverted. Sometimes, my dog's not shy. Sometimes this shyness is based on the idea of insecurity. Well, it's always based on insecurity, but sometimes that they're introverted and they don't want to act. But sometimes extroverts can also be shy because they're trying to cover up their insecurities with being sort of over the top. Very difficult for them to take a compliment. Very difficult for people to take credit when they're shy. They think they just got lucky. I'm tragically shy. Unbelievably shy. And a lot of people would go, well, that doesn't make sense. You're in front of a crowd and you keep them entertained, or even right here. I'm not shy here because this is my home and I'm talking into a microphone, and this goes back to my radio days. So I'm in control of this environment. I could hit stop, pause, redo this whole video if I wanted to. So that control takes away my shyness a little bit. This is never addressed in schools, which is really sort of strange. We just assume kids know how to meet other kids. You know, it's just, all right, it's recess, go for it. Some kids don't like that. You know, the nervous day of the first day of school and lunch, who do I eat with? They can become overwhelmed, especially when surrounded by narcissists. They can become overwhelmed, but sometimes a shy kid likes a narcissist because that narcissist is going to take all the attention. They don't have to worry about being looked at. There's the parts of the brain behind our personalities, the gray area. You see the rewards of the introvert versus the extrovert. You see how the hypothalamus and the wants get in the way, and other parts there. It's just sort of interesting stuff that goes along with it if you want to take a look at that. The hippocampus and my memories, the amygdala and my fears, all part of it. Last part we need to talk about is culture. Again, with a social cognitive perspective of personality, how does my outside shape my inside? In spite of the world of judgments, those most likely to suffer discriminations do not necessarily have less self-esteem. And that's where it gets tricky, because we think, well, if you grew up as a victim of racism, a victim of discrimination, you're just going to be an insecure person for the rest of your lives. When really that's not true. Women and minorities have the discrimination throughout their lives, and they've learned to develop a little bit of a thicker skin. They've learned very early, most of them, not all. If it's not me, it's other people. You learn to dismiss certain opinions. You've learned to filter out certain things. This is why, again, boys have higher suicide rates than girls. Whites suffer from depression more than other groups. We talked about this in adolescence. We value things, they excel, and we compare to others in our own individual groups. And again, I showed you this chart before. The highest suicide rate of all groups, teens are way down here, but white males. Because white males have all their life never really faced discrimination. I have never been pulled over because of my race in a neighborhood. I have never been followed in a store because someone thought I was going to steal something. These are things that I've never been told, don't do that. It doesn't you don't lift that, I've never been limited in that growing up as a white male. Whereas other people who were told, no, you can't do that, no, that's not your role, they've learned to filter out those no's and sort of build within. And this is why when you get a white guy who hits 65 and suddenly you're looked at as old, you're looked at as not as important and things like that, their suicide rate ticks up much higher than these other groups who stay consistent. Again, black males tend to stay pretty consistent. White and black females tend to stay consistent as well. Now, last thing we need to talk about is the cultural impact on the self. America tends to be, again, much more individualistic. Here in the reds, you see these are much more individualistic countries where it's about me. I'm going to move away. Where you see the greens and the yellows here, the yellows are kind of in the middle. The greens are more of a collectivist culture. Now, collectivists like you, Latin American family, even moving to the United States, it's still very much in family and large gatherings, and you don't want to move too far away from your family. Yet those born, raised, living in individualistic cultures in America, it's if I got a good job in Seattle, I'm moving to Seattle. You know, if my girlfriend is in Pennsylvania, I'm moving to Pennsylvania. I don't care if I'm going away from my family. So we tend to be much more individualistic, which means we're much more mobile and everything else, which is great because you can change classes and everything else. You can be whatever you want to be. You can change religions, more freedom of choice. But as we talked about earlier in the year, the more choice you have, the more stress you have. You're more likely to face depression because, yes, I could go to Seattle and get that job, but if I don't get the job, it's my fault. You know, I made that choice. I made that decision. And then I go off to Seattle and I don't have family around me. Where's my support? So it's great because you got a lot of choice and you got a lot of mobility, but you're making your own bed and you've got to lie in it. You're responsible for it, as opposed to a more collectivist culture. Asian cultures tend to be more collectivist. They tend to be more family oriented. Latin American, same. My wife, who sells new homes, when she sells homes to a lot of Asian buyers and also buyers from Mexico and Central and South America, she'll get a lot of families that want to have multi-generational homes. They want to have a place for the grandparents as well as the parents, as well as the children, or sometimes even a child suite. So when the child goes off to college, they can move back in home, and when they get married, they can live at home for a year or two and then go off. This is a much more collectivist culture. My success is my family's success. So if I face struggles, my family is going to help me. It's going to be there. Now, again, individualistic cultures, American and European cultures, we can very much help one another. I've been helping my kids a great deal, even though they're in their 30s and 20s. I'm still helping them during this coronavirus situation. But the collectivist culture, the we culture, it's already ingrained. You never give them a chance to sort of move away. And sometimes there is a fear within these Asian cultures of becoming too Americanized, too westernized. So there's a little bit of a struggle between the traditional self and the new self. This is why Japan, China, very much sometimes close their borders to American ideas. Because it's not rooted in the family, it's rooted in the individual. So that can also have a huge impact on personality, some things about introversion there, a little bit of a difference between individualism and culturalism there, review, major personality theories that we've all talked about. These have been the last few lectures, and research methods to investigate personalities there. And that's it. So that should get us through all on personality. The next couple of videos are on intelligence.